Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
All right, welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. This is Daniel.
And this is Gary.
And this is Mike.
And with us once again is Colby. We've done the last two episodes with him, and he's with us. But
fantastic to have you, by the way.
It is.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a privilege for me.
And alluded, it's kind of mentioned in our last episode that we did. You kind of mentioned IFS, and we really wanted to dive into that further because I know there's a lot of listeners that are interested in that. I participated in it a little bit, not as an extensive as you do, because that's one of your expertise. So we wanted to talk about that, because I really found a lot of value in what I've done with it, and I think that not only that, I think a lot of our listeners, whether it's a betrayed partner or even the addict, can really benefit from it.
And I'm thinking that there are a couple of principles that I might be familiar with, but I haven't been through any kind of program like that I'm aware of. So I'm going to start out with the question, what is IFS?
Yeah, absolutely. So IFS stands for Internal Family Systems. And I think in layman's term, I think we understand this. We use it in our language all the time. We just don't know what we're really saying, right? I think most people can relate to, well, I have the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, and they're kind of arguing, right?
Yeah.
Or oftentimes I'll hear people say, well, there's a part of me. Mm-hmm. Okay. So really what IFS does is it's a systems-based therapy model which says that we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a system, in a community, right? Inside of our initial family, inside of our extended family, within a culture, within a time frame, right? All of those things, and all of those things are all moving parts that impact the person, right? Mm-hmm. I think of a wind chime. When the wind blows, different parts of a wind chime move, and when they clash together, they make noise. Sometimes that noise is really pretty, and sometimes that noise is annoying.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the idea of systems theory. Well, Dr. Richard Schwartz, who's the founder of Internal Family Systems, he noticed that, well, systems don't just occur outside of us. They happen inside of us as well.
Okay.
And so that's really where the groundwork for this model began. When he was working with clients, he started off working with clients with eating disorders, and some psychosis. And what he learned from those experiences really was, from his clients, that they would just say, well, there's a part of me that thinks this, but there's a part of me that thinks that, and they don't really agree. And so what he did is he was just curious. Well, let's get to know those parts. Let's get to know why they're here, what they're doing, right? And so really it just came from a place of just being curious and realizing that he felt inadequate to be able to help people without really giving these parts inside of them a voice. And so that's really where it all started. And he came up with the understanding that there's different parts of us. So primarily, there's what he identifies as self-energy. It's the core of who we are. I think in different traditions, you're going to hear it different ways. I think you're going to hear it as, in Christianity, you're going to hear it as the light of Christ or the God image inside of me, right? In other types of practices, you're going to hear it is kind of this practice of namaste, right? Where peace with me, peace with you, right? We're going to hear a lot of those types of verbiage. And so it's a part that is innate within inside of us. It doesn't need to learn. It doesn't need to grow. It doesn't need to change. It doesn't need any of that. It just innately is, and we can connect with that. And that's on board from day one, right? There's nothing that we have to gain. I think oftentimes in sex addiction work, you're going to hear it as the detached inner observer, right? This part inside of me that is able to separate things out, that's able to navigate the world, right? And so that's kind of the core essence of who we are, is this self energy, right? Well, when we're young and have experiences in life, there's a part that we call exiles. And the exiles are the parts of us that are wounded, that have been wounded by our experience, right? So, for example, if we had traumas, or whatever happened in our life that our brain said this wasn't okay, there's a part of us that gets what we call burdened with this wound, and it holds this wound, and this wound is painful, right? It's not pleasant to have to feel that over and over and over again, right? Like, for example, on the last, this might not make sense if you didn't listen to the last podcast, but when I shared the experience of learning about Santa Claus, right, there was a part of me that captured a wound at that point, that dealt with trust.
Yeah.
Who can I trust? Who can I not trust, right? And so when this part is activated inside of me, my system freaks out because that's a lot of pain. So there's other parts that get burdened with protecting that part. And we call those protectors, but there's two different types of protectors. The first one is managers. And the manager is proactive. I'm trying to do everything in my power not to allow myself to feel this pain, right? Most of us on a day-to-day basis are manager-led. That's what gets us up in the morning. That's what gets us out of the door and to work, because we're trying to prevent maybe losing a job or losing our house because we know we need to go to work, right? It works in a preventative way. The other manager is what we call firefighters, and they work in a reactive way. And this is where you're going to see a lot of extreme behaviors, such as addiction. Is the exile comes up, it shares its pain, its wound, right? And our body says, no, at all cost, we will not feel this pain, and it shoves it back down. And firefighters are reactive that way, and I think firefighters is such a perfect term for that, because when a firefighter goes into a burning house, what are their primary obligations? To save lives, right, and minimize structural damage, right?
Yeah.
Are they going in to save the 5-generation-old China?
Nope.
No, they're not there for that. They're there to protect at all costs, right? And that's what addiction does, is when we're escaping in our addiction, we're reacting in a behavior that protects us at all costs. We don't care of the consequences, the outcomes of that behavior. We're solely focused, these parts are solely focused on protecting us in the moment, right? And so what we find is when we can start connecting with these protective parts, we start building a relationship with them. And so sometimes, we get worried that, what do you mean there's a different part of me? What is this other voice that's talking in my head, right? We get a little bit nervous because of what our culture has made out to be certain things, right? But really, we all have this inside of us. And go ahead.
You make bargains with yourself all the time.
All the time. And we're just making that overt. And we're just talking about it. Okay, let's talk about that bargain. Why did you make that bargain with yourself? Where do you notice yourself inside of you or around you where you feel like you made that bargain, right? Where's that located in your body, right? Well, I noticed it in my chest, right? I noticed that I was feeling some hesitancy, and I just had to protect myself, so I chose this behavior to get rid of what was happening in my chest. Okay. when did that first come on board for you? When did you first notice in your life that you had to protect yourself from that? Right? And we just really try to build a relationship and talk to that part. I want to get to know you because you're so valuable. And I'm going to use Gary,
Sure.
for this example. Gary, this part cares so much about you, Gary, that it is willing to do whatever it needs to in order to protect you. Its intention is pure. Now, the consequences of that behavior might be unhealthy, and we might experience a lot of consequences and trauma because of that, but it cares so much about you that it will do whatever it takes to protect you. That kind of flips on its head what we think about addictive behavior. We're not excusing addictive behavior, but if we spend enough time to get to know what was the purpose of the addictive behavior, and we start to build one of the characteristics of self-energy is compassion, right? And curiosity. So if we can be curious about that part and we can have compassion for that, my addiction no longer is the enemy, but a friend to understand as to why. And it really holds so many mysteries that I've felt my entire life, but it holds the answers. I just have to get to know it a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Feel like I ramble because there's so much
No.
trying to go through my head.
No,
So.
okay. So one thing that I read or I came across was that you at your worst and you at your best look very much alike.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, if you would take all of the energy and the resources and the willingness to take a risk and do all of the stuff that you did to make your addiction happen, if you could learn to use your powers for good,
Yeah.
that it would turn your whole life around. And now you're describing this, and that's what comes to my mind. It's
Yep.
like, oh, there's this part of me that wanted so badly to do whatever it took to protect me from this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's a part of me. It's not going anywhere. Right?
Nope.
But if I could get to know it, and then learn to harness its powers for good.
Sure.
Is that the idea?
So I'll change the wording.
Sure.
But yes.
Yeah, please.
So I love these two phrases. Richard Schwartz, Dr. Schwartz, he has a book called No Bad Parts.
Okay.
Because there really is no bad part of us. There are good parts burdened in bad roles.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when you look at this, is the intention, that part's true, sincere desire is so good. It's so good, but it's been burdened with a task that it is only doing what it knows how to do to protect you, right? And so, and the other phrase is, I love this phrase, and I love starting with this phrase of, all parts of you are welcome.
Okay.
How many times have we not heard that
Oh yeah.
in our life, especially with our addictive behavior?
Yeah.
When have we inherently known that all parts of me are not welcome in this situation,
Yeah.
right? Whether that's by my choice or by someone else's choice, not all parts of me have been welcome. And really what it is all of my behavior is not welcome, but all of my parts are welcome. Because them in their natural state is good. When they're burdened, there's a mask over their face, and they're burdened with a role that is not what they truly ultimately want to do.
Well, as you're talking about this, I'm gonna make a movie reference. The movie Clicked with Adam Sandler, and he has the remote.
I'm not familiar with that
Okay,
movie, but
that's okay.
I'll take your word for
Well, so basically, he has this remote where he can fast forward and pause through things, and you know, when he's bored at work, he fast forwards through it, and he skips that. And then, you know, there's times where his wife is yelling at him, and he fast forwards through that. Well, eventually, the remote gets programmed, you know, and he also does it when, you know, when his wife is sick, it skips over that, and when the kids are complaining about stuff. And so it gets programmed that, oh, when something like this happens, it just skips him over that. And so it goes into this auto program mode, and it starts skipping, where it gets to a point where he ends up with cancer and like misses out on 25 years. and his kids that once were young are now adults. And it's kind of like that prospect where the programming that went into it was bad. The remote had good intentions, just to help him, avoid those challenging or difficult things.
Yeah.
But then he missed out on so many things because of the consequences of the bad programming.
Yeah. Where I thought you were going to go with that, Daniel, is the movie Inside Out.
Well, there was also that too, where Joy is trying to manage sadness.
Yeah, so kind of a fun story about that. So Frank Anderson, he's another individual who's kind of, he's a really big deal in the IFS world. He's kind of Dick Schwartz's right-hand man in a lot of ways. Well, Pixar actually hired Frank Anderson, to go and consult with them about this movie Inside Out. And so really Inside Out is based off of the internal family systems therapy model.
Okay.
Right? Because anger and anxiety is in Inside Out too, I believe.
Yeah.
But sadness, all of those emotions, they all had a positive desire. How it acted out wasn't always in a helpful, healthy way.
Oh, yeah.
But the desire was always to help Riley.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And to care for Riley.
Okay.
That was always the intention. And our parts, that's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're there to help us and protect us. Sometimes the way that they've learned how to do that, not always in the healthiest ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I'm going to pipe in here for just a second if I can.
Go ahead.
I think the piece that resonated with me more than anything is this idea of becoming curious about my addiction. And I think that is when I finally made the transition from being angry and being and struggling with this whole idea of addiction was when I became curious about why me, or why did it happen at this particular point in my life? What are the circumstances? I've been carrying this burden of addiction for 50 plus years. I was well below the age of 10 when I think I first started acting out, and so that means then that I've carried this for a very long time, and I always want to go back to what was happening at that particular point in my life that this became such a prevalent resource for me, because that's exactly what it was. I stumbled onto this addiction in a very honest and meaningful way, right? I needed a way to escape the world that I was living in at the particular point in time, and it only got worse, not better, in terms of as the intensity of my problems that I was dealing with increased, so did my acting out behaviors. And so this idea of curiosity suddenly has changed this. It's been very transitional for me to find that my addiction isn't necessarily my enemy. It's become, to some extent, it's become my friend, which is something that I would have never guessed in a million years. And I think that's, as I hear you talk, as you talk about this IFF model that we're talking about, this internal family systems idea, that really what we're talking about is just that. It's a transitional phase of understanding why it is that the behaviors that we engaged in have created this, and that suddenly once we understand it, it can share a whole lot of insight into our world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gary's wheels are turning.
Well, okay. Well, when I was in my darkest places, I would used to say things like "I hate myself" or "I'm a terrible person" or all of these kind of things, and I don't know that I've ever stopped to think about the context of or think about it in the context of I'm made up of all of these pieces, okay, and the idea of having them all welcome or your intent is good, but you got a crappy job, or you got the job you're not good at. You're doing the best you can with what you got. So I'm kind of wrestling with the idea, or I like the idea. It's a different way for me to think about it. I don't know that I've thought about it that way before, but the idea that there's, I don't know.
Are you willing to walk with me for just
Sure.
a second?
Okay.
This is going to be fun.
Is it?
Well, it'll be fun for me. I don't know.
Can we find a way to make this more public?
Yes.
Or permanent? Let's go ahead.
But Gary, when you go back to those moments when you're kind of reliving that of I hate myself, I'm worthless, right? I want you to see if you can embrace a little bit of curiosity right now and ask that voice, that message, what were you trying to do for me in that moment that I'm not understanding? And don't try and think of an answer. Just see if something pops up. See if something resonates.
Okay. Do you want me to share that?
Yeah. What did you notice?
I don't know exactly how to articulate it, but the first thing that comes to my mind is you were hurting.
Yeah. Can you ask that, wherever that voice came from, that method, can you tell me more about my hurt and why hating myself was protective?
Ask that again.
Sure. So there's a part of you that's letting you know that it was because you were hurt. Ask that part, help me understand how to connect those dots. I was feeling hurt, and so the message that was coming was, I hate myself. Just ask that part if it's willing to share more information to connect those dots for you.
The hurt came from perception of maybe not being good enough. And I hate that I wasn't. Or what I thought was good enough. I don't know how else to articulate it.
You're okay. You're okay. It's just giving us information at this point, right? What did it mean to not be good enough?
There were expectations that I couldn't meet, or the way that, or what I understood was put that I couldn't do. I wasn't good enough, or I didn't have.
Yeah. Just stick with it. It's okay. So you felt like there was these expectations that were placed on you that you weren't reaching.
Or I didn't know how to.
Or you didn't know how to. Okay. That makes sense to me. So when did that voice learn to say, I hate myself?
When I couldn't meet the expectation, and then I was disappointed.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
And I hate that about that. I hate that about that I couldn't, or that I wasn't.
And so when you hated yourself, what did you end up doing? When you told yourself, I hate me, what ended up happening?
You mean like when I would act out, or
just when you would tell that message to yourself, or when that part would tell you that message, what ended up happening?
I believed it. I would escape. I would change what I was doing. I don't.
So I escaped the pain of being a disappointment by hating myself.
disapproving of myself, I guess. I don't, but yeah, I suppose so. Because then I could blame something, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Another thought that I'm just going to run past you, and your parts can tell me if this is correct or not. It's a lot less painful to hate myself than to feel hated by others or disappointing others.
Yeah, because then it... Because then I would be on their side and they would approve of that behavior because we had the same opinion.
Wow. So by hating myself, it's how I found acceptance. Wow. Wow. And so in a very backwards way, can you see why that part was so dedicated to hating you? Because it knew a higher purpose. If I can get Gary to hate himself, he'll feel more acceptance around him.
Huh. I ran out of those.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. No, I'd never thought about it that way.
And why would we?
Yeah.
Except for when we actually get to know these parts and we are open to what the message is. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in my office and had this experience with individuals who are coming in going, I hate this behavior that I do. It doesn't make sense. There's no benefit to it. We spend 5 minutes and they're like, that was my truest friend. It cared enough about me when no one else did to protect me the only way it knew how. And that completely shifts the dynamic of how we're looking at this problematic behavior of shame.
Yeah.
Right? Shame was a vital part of your existence because in a way, it helped you feel accepted and seen. Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable. And I want to thank your parts for being willing to show up and be vulnerable in a promptu, very public way. Because that's scary. And so I just want them to know from the bottom of my heart how grateful I am that they were willing to share.
Let me ask you a question.
Please.
Okay, so you've definitely given me something new to think about.
Sure.
Yeah, kind of a new experience.
Mm-hmm.
So now, having had that experience in the future, if I win, I'll say win, when I get that message, how do I take what I've learned now and bring it into that moment in a way that's going to benefit me?
Yeah. Is it crazy to think that we only touch the tip of the iceberg in that moment?
Oh, no. I would say that's...
Because what we just found out is the protective system in your world around that concept. We haven't even addressed the wound, the exiled part of that moment.
Okay.
Right? So we're only one step deep into this in a very deep step process.
Sure.
Right? And so if we were to continue doing this, right, I would work to help you build a relationship between your self-energy and this part that's been so hell-bent on protecting you. And once we built that relationship, I would then ask this protective part, are you willing to sit next to Gary? If I can show you a way where we can heal this wound and you won't have to be burdened with this hateful kind of idea, would you be interested in that? And we have to get the protector's permissions first. Because if we don't get their permission, if we go too deep, we're going to create a huge backlash, and the protective parts are going to come out and say, I didn't approve of that. And we might fall back into some of our acting out behavior, right? So I never want to get to the exile too quickly.
Interesting.
And I want to make sure that all protective parts are on board with this. Because if they're not, I'm going to hear about it in the next session. Right? And so once I got all the approval, what I would do is I would go back down and I would ask the exile if it would be willing to share more of its story. What was it like to not feel accepted? Please tell me about those experiences. Can you recount those experiences so that I can be here with you? From my today self, I can be here with you. And as we build that relationship, as that part learns to trust you more, then we work on, okay, does it feel appropriate, or does it feel okay to let go of some of that? We can let go of it in any way that feels right. We can burn it. We can let it wash away. We can give it to our higher power. We can do whatever. But are you ready to release some of that? Right? And then once we're able to release some of that, we invite the protective parts back in and say, can you witness this exiled part as being different? Is not holding on to that wound anymore. And as they are able to witness that, they then have more freedom to go do other things that they want to. I can't tell you the number of times that after I've done this process, people's protective parts say, I just want to go to sleep. By all means, go to bed. Some are, I just want to go outside and play in the toys. By all means, go do that. Because they don't feel the necessity to protect you as fiercely as they once felt like they had to. Right? So that would be the steps that we would follow in IFS. And then there's kind of a following up process where they found through research between 21 and 30 days is how often we need you to check in with that part multiple times after it's released the burden, to check in with it multiple times, because sometimes parts can get reburdened or take back the burden. And so we need 21 to 30 days is what they found of daily check-ins with that part to let it still know, hey, I'm here. I haven't went anywhere. We're still okay. Right? For that part to finally get used to a new normal of, I don't have to carry this burden anymore. I don't have to carry that wound anymore. And that's how trauma therapy in the IFS lens works.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we were to continue that process, that's what it would look like.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you for that. That was very interesting.
Because, and something that happens, I get jazzed about this, so I could talk all day, so tell me to shut up if you need to.
I don't even know. I'm not going to get a bill for this, am I?
No.
Look at that. Free.
No.
First one's free.
But, I can't tell you the number of times that I've sat here and dealt with this, and people say, I don't remember what happened. But the second we touch with those parts remember.
Yeah.
And they'll start sharing experiences and memories you haven't thought about or remembered for years. And you're like, I don't know why I do this. But once we get in touch with those parts, they know exactly why. Down to the exact age at which they were burdened. They know it. Mm-hmm. They've memorized it. And oftentimes they get stuck in that age. So, as Mike had mentioned earlier in the podcast, at a very young age, before 10 years old, right, his parts got stuck in that time frame that only knew how to save Mike at an 8-year-old level, because they don't know that Mike's actually grown up. They get stuck in that place. And so oftentimes when we're acting out or we're doing something, we don't feel our current age. We oftentimes feel much younger. Or the way that we respond in a certain way, we feel much younger. It's because, and this is backed up in research all over the place, that when trauma occurs, it gets us stuck and it stints our growth, emotionally or mentally or whatever in that way, right? And so what we do is we try to update those parts that actually a lot of life has happened. Sometimes I'll ask clients to pull out their driver's license and just look at it and say, can you let this part know that you actually have a driver's license? That you're actually this years old? And there'll just be shock on their face. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. It's so amazing.
Well,
but
I have to wonder, how many, I know it happened with me, but how many times have, maybe one of our listeners has been like, they've been in an argument or a fight with their partner and they're like, why are you acting so immature? And more than likely it's because that part is activated.
Mm-hmm.
And they are acting immature because that part, especially with me, there was a part that was 8 or 9, that would always jump up, and that take the reins, so to say. And, why are you being so immature? It's because that one was really focused on protecting me in that moment, and it was doing the best it could as an 8 or 9-year-old level, not at my age.
Yep.
And it's fascinating. But not only doing this work, I found that I'm able to move through things a lot faster and quicker than talk therapy, because it's actually that part is like, all right, I'm being listened, I'm feeling safe. And they can retire. They can go to bed or go play with the toys. And when you check in, they do finally say, okay, I can leave my hat on the hanger and I don't have to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I can go do what it is that I want to do from now on.
Yep, absolutely.
It's amazing. So, thanks. We are out of time, unfortunately, but for our listeners, like, you got to see or listen firsthand of what this is like. And we didn't have to spend a full hour. It was just a few minutes, and Colby connected with a part within Gary, and if you were here, you could see the emotion that came up, and there wasn't a lot said, and this part started speaking up, and it was amazing. So if you've ever wondered, I would suggest doing this. It really helped in my recovery. I'm not sure if Mike has done it. We know Gary hasn't, because this was his first opportunity.
He's done it now.
This is his first opportunity, but talk to your therapist. Look into it, because it's amazing what it can do, even if it's not just for addiction. It's really good, because we've all got wounded parts. It's just life. It is what it is. So thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for what you did with Gary and showing our listeners, kind of what it's like. They got a little bit of a taste. But we're going to go, and I'm going to sign off saying, this is Daniel. Find the humility in your recovery.
And this is Mike saying, do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.